With us this morning to review the papers are entrepreneur Kate Hardcastle and Gemma Ford, who's broadcaster and writer. And there they are, like magic popping up in the screen there. It's great to have both of you here with us. Kicking off with you then, Gemma, let's just talk about this story in the Mail there, just the latest on Nicola Bulley, this mother of two who's gone missing. And there's just been so much from the police and what they're releasing. It's just some of the awful conspiracy theories around this.
The coverage of this case has been atrocious. The handling of this case has been, I'm not going to say laughable because there's nothing funny about it, but also look at the headline here in the Mail on Sunday. This is problematic. Why is it producing a piece like this? Of course she's not an unfit mum. We do not need to be looking at whether she's a good mum or not. She's a missing person. And this is just so misogynistic, this sort of coverage. All we've heard about is like, oh, she likes a glass of wine, or she might be perimenopause, or what she's like as a mother. And you just know that if a man had gone missing, which is less likely because men don't go missing in these kind of strange circumstances as much, but that's aside, you wouldn't be getting coverage like this. And it has to end, and the Mail on Sunday is complicit in it. I don't think we should be reading pieces like this. We don't need to know what kind of a person she is. It's irrelevant, and it's absolutely disgusting for her family and friends. I feel really strongly about it, and I think this piece and those kinds of headlines are completely wrong at this sensitive time when the poor woman, nobody knows where she is.
And really brings it home, actually, absolutely what you're saying there. What does it matter what she's going through? She's a missing person who needs to be found, and her family are absolutely going through it. And, you know, it's devastating. And never mind her two children as well, who are really going to be suffering because of this. Let me come to you, Kate. The next story here, this is about the diet of toddlers in the UK. This is not looking very good, is it? The UK among the worst in the world.
You're right, Vanessa. Sorry, I just have to say this in the previous story. If the newspapers are that desperate to fill the column inches, could they actually start mentioning some of the other missing people that actually need the attention as well? Because we have a job to do. Right, on to the story of toddlers. A concerning study, 66,000 children have been studied across 8 countries, and here in the UK, it looks like we've got the biggest challenge, and that's in terms of the highest consumption rate of mass-produced, ready-to-eat foods. Now, I absolutely think a lot of this is down to the packaging. No parent is going to go out wanting to buy foods that in long-term, perhaps adult life even, have been studied and associated with things like cancer and obesity, etc. Adults and parents are trying to do the right thing for their children. And I think a lot of this comes down to packaging, information on packaging, what it means. And I think there are some over-claims at times in terms of the healthiness, understanding the sugar provision, the fat provision, etc. So I think this is a big reminder that as parents do turn constantly to things like ready-made meals for ease and time pressures, etc., there has to be adequate and honest packaging information on there so that people know exactly what they're buying.
And Gemma, let's talk about this next story, which is definitely dominating. This is migrant woes. This is in the Sun newspaper there. We know the protests yesterday drew in hundreds of people, a large crowd actually, but there's clear tensions, isn't there, in these areas where asylum seekers are being housed?
Yeah, and you have to look at why all these tensions are bubbling to the surface. So there were the riots in Knowsley only, a week ago, where 15 people were arrested. And the footage from that was really frightening. And there are all these sort of theories floating around the internet, sort of trying to justify it. Nothing justifies rallying together far-right racist groups to go and cause damage, be violent, threaten people, asylum seekers and refugees. And here we go again, more riots, and they're clashing actually as well with people who are protesting against the rioters. How have we got here? Well, I would say culture wars have been stoked. Irresponsible language stokes the fire of these things as well. We have a Home Secretary who does not help, in my view. Her very late statement after Knowsley was not good enough. Lee Anderson himself has come out and said Sunak's going to fight the next election on culture wars. Great, really responsible. So I don't think we've seen the last of this kind of behaviour, and the lid needs to be put back on. It's not good.
And Kate, let's talk about this other story, Tesla. This is an Observer, and not enough charging points. And you kind of think, we've been talking about this for a very long time, going electric, going green, charging points. I mean, this is not a great selling point for people, is it? If you can't actually find the point to charge your car, if you're trying to convince people to go electric.
This is a story full of numbers, which I'm sure everyone will pore over as I have this Sunday morning. But just obviously to go through the very short synopsis, we are going through an evolution in terms of looking at electric vehicles. So when it came to December last year, a third of cars sold that month were electric. So more people transitioning, more people finding an option that suits them when it comes to electric vehicles. And yet the infrastructure is still work in progress. And that means when it comes to the summer holidays, particularly in areas like Dorset that have 3.6 million overnight stays each year, which of course then completely increases the amount of people in that area, suddenly the provision of electric charging units are not adequate. And apparently at Christmas, if you perhaps were affected with this, it will be something that's a very clear memory for you. We had these huge queues of Christmas chaos of people trying to get their electric cars charged at service stations. So we are amidst the chaos. There's a lot of challenge because people are very critical of electricity and electric vehicles still not being a completely clean solution. We will by 2050 need 50% more electricity if we carry on this transition to electric vehicles. But I think we've also got to understand this is work in progress. The whole thing with environmental and sustainable, and believe me, I have done more than my fair share over 3 years and really going through those recycling plants, electric vehicle plants, etc., is that it is work in progress, and it's going to not be an easy flick from, right, problem solved, there we go, all the polar bears can rest at ease. This is going to be things where we experiment with things, where we aren't really fully infrastructure correct, but we will get there, and as that happens, more technology will come and improve things too. So worth a read if you're an electric vehicle owner.
Gemma, are you an electric vehicle owner? I mean, look, I haven't been able to afford a Tesla. One day maybe, but what about you? Does this entice you to the electric car revolution?
I have a hybrid, actually, that for me is perfect because I can't have a charger at the front of my house. I wouldn't be able to because, you know, it's a busy street. So the hybrid for me works really well. Yeah.
Well, you're doing your bit then. You are doing your bit for the environment is what I would say.
Right.
Let me stay with you on this next story then. This is an interesting one. So this is on page 5 of the Sunday Telegraph. And it says here, Truss was right. That's according to Starmer as he commits to supporting British food. But what's even more interesting, I have to read this next bit because there's a reason for it. So Labour leader says 30% of produce should be grown in UK as he cites ex-PM speech on cheese imports. And who can forget that speech? That is a disgrace. I've been wanting to get that off my chest.
Right. Yes, pork market. Yes, the weirdest speech known to man. And I rolled my eyes when you mentioned Truss because my mortgage, like everybody else's, has just gone spiralling through the roof, and it's horrendous. So I'm furious that she was ever Prime Minister, frankly. But in terms of that speech, some of what she was saying sort of was fairly good. The reason it was so mocked is because her delivery sounded like she was malfunctioning and she can't communicate. But what Starmer is saying is that if Labour come to power, they're going to make it an aim to make sure that any money that is spent on the public sector on food, that a much higher proportion of it is spent on British produced food, which, you know, there is a valid point there in terms of sustainability and, of course, in terms of supporting British farmers as well. That is a good aim. But Liz Truss, get in the bin.
Get in the bin. Kate, you must have seen that that very famous clip. That is a disgrace. But I can't even do it. I can't even manage to do that properly.
It's going to stay with me for life, believe me. She might be in the bin. No, I'm from Yorkshire. What chance do I?
But let's stick with food then. So on the topic of food, crumpets, a bit of a shortage. My goodness, what are we going to do? Look, personally, I'm not a fan of crumpets, so I'm okay with this. But my producer, Simon, he had the same reaction as you. He's livid.
I mean, Vanessa, we need to talk off air about the crumpet situation. I mean, crumpets are just fantastic. And the first thing this article wants me, I'm going to go down to the shop and buy crumpets now. But as well as entice you, I have to warn you that prices have doubled. And we know that's part of the feed inflation, disruption of flour supplies. We know energy issues for a lot of these companies. Now, Warburton's are the biggest manufacturer of crumpets. They make 5 million a week, so I think you might be a little bit out of kilter with the public opinion on this, Vanessa. But the interesting thing is, and as I've always said, we as the consumer, even in a cost of living crisis, will buy emotionally. And actually, even though these prices are going up phenomenally, particularly in Morrison's, where the prices have gone up 135%, but it has gone up in every supermarket, we are buying more of them. And that's because we are wanting comfort food. This is the time of year where the weather gets so bad and the skies are so grey, we look for that comfort. So I think that's really important to understand, that consumers are trying to battle absolutely the amount of items they're buying and trying to provide for families. But we will still shop emotionally, and so we need that comfort. And that's the interesting thing about this. Yep. Despite prices doubling, sales continue to rocket.
Kate, thank you so much. It's been great to have your company. Kate Hardcastle and Gemma Fort, thank you very much. And I'll see you after this break.